right, it's talk time.
We're joined now by a nutritionist, Adeomi Olufunmilola. Of course, also joining us from our Abuja studio is the chief nutritionist at UNICEF, Ariane Dewat. Glad to have you join us. Good morning. Okay, so let's start this way. Some observers say that malnutrition is a permanent feature of Nigeria's health sector. It's been described as a silent crisis. Let me come to you, Ariane, from UNICEF. Is this, I mean, when we talk about malnutrition, maybe we should even begin by defining it. What exactly are we talking about? What is malnutrition?
Well, malnutrition is, of course, in particular that a child has not eaten well. A child is too thin or too short. Actually, there are two measures that we're using. One measure is, what I said, is too short. A child didn't receive the nutrients to grow as well. Now you might wonder that maybe being tall, being short is not such a big issue, but it means that the child also didn't have the nutrients for brain development. And actually we see that children who are stunted, who are short, too short for their age, also their IQ is not as high as it could be. And besides that, also the immune system is not fully developed when a child is malnourished. And as a consequence, a child that is malnourished has got a much higher risk of dying of common childhood illnesses like measles, diarrhea, respiratory infections. So these are the impacts of malnutrition. That's what I said earlier, it was stunting, it's too short. But we also have a more severe form, which is called wasting. And wasting is the kind of malnutrition where a child has lost all its fat. I call it often its skin over bone, and you've just seen some of the pictures on the TV where you see the very wasted, very skinny children with that kind of malnutrition level. These children have got a 10 times higher risk of dying. And what we see in Nigeria, as you said in your introduction, we have about 2.5 million children in 2016 that have this condition of wasting. And if nothing is done, about 1 in 5 of these children will die. And that's of course of a very large concern for organizations like UNICEF, but I know also for the government. In particular because, as you said yourself, we know what we can do about it. That is specialized food that we can use to treat the children that have this very severe form of malnutrition.
All right, Ariane, let me stay with you a little bit on this. Now, they talked about the therapeutic food that was made available by UNICEF earlier on. Now is no longer available in the country. What could be responsible for this now?
So if I understood you correctly, that there's not enough of this product available?
Now, the therapeutic food that was made available for children is no longer available now.
Yeah, correct. No, the issue is that we have about 2.5 million children in Nigeria in 2016 that will require this very specialized product. I call it a miracle food. It is not just a normal food, it's we call it a therapeutic food. It's a very nutrient-dense product, and at the moment this product is being imported from abroad because there's at the moment no production yet in Nigeria. But I'm very happy that as we speak there's a company in Lagos, and I know there's 1 or 2 other companies in Nigeria which are about to start production of this product also in Nigeria. The big challenge is that there's not enough funding to have enough of this product available for the 2.5 million children. And as a consequence, a large number of these children are not being reached. And as I said earlier, if a child doesn't catch this kind of product, about 1 in 5 of them are likely to die. At the moment, the product is mainly being financed through donor support. For instance, the British government, the American government. We're also receiving support from the EU and also from the Children Investment Fund Foundation. But also the government, very recently the government has issued statements that they also want to start more investing in buying this product so that more children can benefit from this treatment of severe malnutrition in the country. So there are very encouraging developments ongoing.
All right, let's come back here to the studio. Olufunmilola Oshinawo, she's a nutritionist. Good to have you. Now, these statistics are quite startling, really troubling. 500,000 children die from malnutrition yearly in Nigeria. How can we turn this tide around very quickly? I mean, listening to our guest in the studio in Abuja there, Ariane, he's talked about the fact that it's only donor agencies, UNICEF, British government and all of those that are actually funding this so-called therapeutic food. When that report was going on, you actually shook your head that it's even no longer available.
Yeah. Lagos State has taken a bold step. They've started with the production of eco chop-up for the malnourished children. Though really the product is not really out yet. We've tried doing a trial version. We've used it in all the maternal and child center, and we discovered that it's really working well. So for now, it's really in process in Lagos State. So that's part of the way of managing the malnutrition.
Okay, that's good to know.
But I want to make an emphasis.
Yes.
It was really making an emphasis on the stunting, underweight, and so on. But what's really the most important one now, bothering Nigeria now, is about the overweight of the obesity.
Obesity in children?
Yes, it's not a real deal. Yes, because we observe that when these children, when they are obese under 5, they end up having issues in adulthood. All this hypertension, diabetics, and so on start resulting. So the best thing is not only looking at the underweight, stunting, and so on. Let's really focus more on obesity in children. So
well, certainly the issue of obesity is
part of malnutrition.
It's so much. Oh, really?
So which means it's not necessarily that the children are overeating, but they're not eating the right combination of nutritious.
Malnutrition is basically about imbalances of the food nutrients. So it can be sufficient, insufficiency, or excessively.
Okay, now let's get to knowing the factors or the reasons behind these issues generally. It never used to be like that, or maybe it wasn't as reported as it is right now. But what are the factors responsible for this malnutrition in our society now?
Taking the idea of many mothers that don't really have time for their children, they have to go to work early, they leave their children to caregivers and so on. So most times those caregivers don't do things the right way. It's either they are starving the babies, or they are giving more than normal, or over dilution of those BMS, that's breast milk substitutes to these to their infant formulas. So they do things in the wrong way. When you over dilute, there's problem. When you under dilute, there's another problem too. The tendency of obesity, tendency of underweight and stunting can result. So do you understand that? So basically the mother should be particular about their children, particular about what goes on when they even drop those children. It's not just putting them down and not turning back at every other time to check on them. So it's highly important too.
Okay, maybe this is where we should. I mean, it's so troubling. You don't even know where to take it from. Looking at, going back to Ariane there in Abuja, it does seem that the information gap, especially for parents, specifically the mothers, is quite, wide. Listening to what our guest here in the studio has just said. In a situation where, look, Nigeria is in dire straits now. The economy is not helping situations. You have a situation where both parents or even guardians have to go out there to work, and so they don't have time, even if they were informed, to see to these children and ensure that they are given the right kind of food so that they grow up, to be healthy citizens. How do we manage this? Ariane?
Okay. I believe yes, thank you very much. I believe there are 4 major factors when it comes to feeding children, which is resulting in undernutrition, but as the previous speaker also talked about, the obesity. The 4 factors, I call them the big 4 of child malnutrition in Nigeria. The first one is exclusive breastfeeding. a child between 0 and 6 months needs breast milk, and breast milk alone. Breast milk is not only food, it is also fluids. But even it's got immune factors. Often we call breast milk the first vaccination a child gets. So we need to ensure that the child only gets breast milk. In the first 6 months, the lining of the gut of a baby is not fully developed. And if you start giving other foods, actually can hurt the guts. The second factor is that from 6 months onwards, we have to start giving other foods. And often, like the previous speaker said, often we give a thin porridge. A thin porridge doesn't have the nutrients as a child requires. Then, the third factor, we have to give enough meals. The size of a stomach of a baby is about this. If you fill it with thin porridge, you fill it mainly with water. So we have to ensure that a nutrition-rich food is being provided 3-4 times a meal, and possibly also snacks like groundnuts or fruits. And a fourth factor, you might not think about it immediately when we talk about nutrition, and that is hygiene. When a child has got diarrhea, a child eats and loses the nutrients immediately. And diarrhea is a very very large contributor to malnutrition in Nigeria. So we really encourage mothers to wash hands before feeding the baby, but also to wash the hands of the baby, because the baby eats with the hands, while just before that the baby has been crawling around on the floor. So these are the 4 factors. Now these 4 factors don't cost much money. Washing hands doesn't cost that much money. Breastfeeding is for free. And if you talk about getting the right food and the right quantity, remember, a stomach of a child is only about this size. We're not talking about huge amounts of food. When you have an egg, who in the family eats the egg? Is it the baby? Is it who in the family eats the egg? Is it the baby? Is it the young child? Or is it the father that eats the egg? When there's some money for some meat, who's getting that meat? But also, even if you don't have some of the animal proteins, can you use beans, pounded groundnuts, vegetables? There is a lot of local foods that people produce themselves or that can be bought at a very low price that can be used. And actually what we see, if we look at the data for Nigeria, we see that about 15% of the children of the richest mothers are also malnourished.
Yeah.
Wow.
So at the other side, we see that among the poorest mothers, about 40-50% of the children are not malnourished. So it is not that poverty leads to malnutrition. Even when people are poor, the child can be fed well. And even when a mother is rich, that does not necessarily mean that she also knows how to feed the child well. So it is something that we really need to invest in to ensure that mothers better understand and fathers better understand, because fathers often have the resources, that they understand what is needed to feed a child properly and to prevent malnutrition. And for me, that is really the big 4 child feeding practices that I mentioned earlier that are the most important in the case of Nigeria. Both to prevent undernutrition as well as obesity, as my colleague in your studio mentioned earlier.
Oh, you talked about the big 4. In understanding this big 4, these are basic things, like you say. It wouldn't even cost money to breastfeed if you are a nursing mother or hygiene and things like that. But what is the challenge in applying this big 4 to growing up children to ensure that they are not malnourished from that level of their lives?
Yeah. So let me repeat again. The big 4, the first one is exclusive breastfeeding during the first 6 months. And many mothers and many fathers think that breastfeeding is not enough, that actually when it is hot and a child sweats, that you have to give more, that you also have to give water. But that's not true. Actually, when a child suckles, the breast, the body of the mother produces more milk, and milk has got a lot of water. So there's an example where parents, mothers, and communities often don't know what is needed. And we see the same when we talk about preparing nutritious meals, but also about giving enough meals and snacks per day. which was number 3. So often it's got to do with basically people not knowing what are the major factors contributing to malnutrition and what they can do about it. And that is why it is so important, what I call, we need a social movement. All of us who know a bit about nutrition, we have to talk to our friends, to our neighbors. I would love to have religious organizations, churches and mosques also to share the message about good feeding. So that we really educate the Nigerian population about how to feed the child properly and in that way prevent malnutrition and death, and invest in the future of Nigeria by actually increasing the intelligence of children by having them better fed.
Now, let me come to you still, Arian, before we come to Fumilola here. Now, when it comes to, the Minister of Health, we just played a report that made him talk about the therapeutic food that government looking forward to enhancing and ensuring the availability. Now, can we have a picture of what the content of this therapeutic food is in order to bring to mind and bring to understanding of average Nigerian what this therapeutic food is about?
Okay. Actually, I have it with me, and let me tell you the whole story. We start with this. It's a strip, and that is to measure the size of the upper arm of a child. We put it around the arm, and if the child ends up in red, which means that the child has got a very, very thin arm, that's the indication that the child is severely malnourished. Well, then the child is being referred to the health center. In the health center, we see if there are underlying problems like diarrhea that need to be treated or measles that need to be treated. And if that's not the case, the child will go into what we call the community management of acute malnutrition program. And the mother will get a sachet of a product like this. This is the therapeutic food. It is a combination of a peanut butter kind of paste to which milk powder is added, oil is added, sugar is added, and vitamins and minerals are added. I call it miracle food. I call it miracle food because I've seen situations where a child, like in the pictures that you showed, is basically on the brink of death. And as I said earlier, a child that is so severely malnourished has got a risk of 1 in 5 of dying if nothing is being done. And we see when this child takes this product, this special food, that within 1 week it might already gain a kilogram. And I've seen cases that after 3-4 weeks, the child starts running around again. And on average, a child stays in the program for about 7-8 weeks. And by that time, the child has gone from red, which is a very dangerous zone, to yellow, which is still malnourished and be careful kind of zone, to green. So within a period of 7 to 8 weeks of using a specialized therapeutic product, the child has really improved.
Okay, before we let you go, Arian, it was heartening to hear the Minister of Health, Isaac Adewale, talk about Nigeria commencing this therapeutic feeding program. You did mention one of the ingredients in that pack that you have, peanut butter and all of that, and these are readily available in Nigeria. Are you going to be working with the Nigerian government on this? That's one question. And I wanted to underscore again the reason why it is important for mothers not to give water to their babies in the first 6 months of their life, even when breastfeeding. Or can you do that too with baby formula? Explain that to us very quickly.
Okay, when we talk about baby formula is not made really for babies. I mean, breast milk is made for babies. And we see that there's a lot of immune factors in breast milk that is not in the infant formula. We also see that often mothers don't have enough money to buy the amount of breast milk substitutes or infant formula as you mentioned. And then they start thinking, well, let's put a little bit extra water. Then of course if you put extra water, you put water but you remove the relative contribution of the nutrients. And the other problem is that infant formula is often produced with the water locally available, and a lot of the water available locally is not safe. And therefore we see that in children that receive infant formula, the risk of malnutrition because of diarrhea is much, much higher. And actually the risk of dying for these children is much higher. So as UNICEF, we really recommend do exclusive breastfeeding in the first 6 months. After that, continue breastfeeding, where we do recognize that there might be exceptional cases where this might be difficult. There is, of course, a possibility for the mother to express breast milk and to keep it for several hours, even outside of a fridge, to feed it to the baby when she's maybe at work or she's not around. And if you have to use, if there's really nothing else that you can do than to use the infant formula, you really have to ensure that you have enough of the infant formula, which is a very expensive product, but you need to have enough, and you really have to prepare it as is indicated. So you have to use very clean water. You have to boil the water before preparing it. You have to keep the water in a clean cup. And you have to keep it covered so no dust can come in and no flies can come in. But the majority of the mothers in Nigeria, I'm happy to say, they can successfully breastfeed. And breastfeeding would be really the way to prevent not only undernutrition, but also breastfeeding is a key way to prevent overnutrition, obesity as well.
All right. Ariane Dawat, Chief Nutritionist, UNICEF, thank you for talking to us on TVC Breakfast. Thank you.
All right, of course, we still have Olufumilola Oshinowo, who's a nutritionist. Let's look at turning the tide around as quickly as possible. You did talk about a very interesting aspect, obesity in children, and it's leading to juvenile diabetes and all kinds of ailments and all of that. So really talk to us, what are even the long-term effects of malnutrition on children, especially when they get older?
The long-term effects have to do more with we adults having challenges. You know, the first thing when you start feeding these children, you have a burden on their kidney.
Children, and it's leading to juvenile diabetes and all kinds of ailments and all of that. So really talk to us, what are even the long-term effects of malnutrition on children, especially when they get older?
The long-term effects have to do more with we adults having challenges. You know, the first thing when you start feeding these children, you have a burden on their kidney. Especially when you give the wrong protein to the wrong child. There is an appropriate breast milk substitute for a child. If a child is between the age of 6 months to a year, it's expected that the child has to take a breast milk substitute that has a number of 2. That's for 6 months. And when you don't give the wrong milk to the wrong child, that shows you are overburdening the kidney, because the kidney is responsible in working on the protein. Are you getting that? So after that, when you have such problem, of course, the kidney, the liver, the heart has to work hands in hands. You end up having burden on the liver, having burden on the heart.
It's overworking
yes.
those organs.
It's doing more than
that's supposed to
necessary.
do.
So at the long run, cardiac arrest can set in, so many other things can come in. So the best thing is mothers should be educated on doing the right thing. As he has said, many people believe that when you breastfeed your child, you have to lose so much from it. But it does not cost you anything. And many don't want their breast to go flat. So many mothers are really particular about that. I know when I breastfeed my baby, my breast will go flat. And I do
So is outlook at the detriment of the health of the baby?
Yes. Even many husbands don't even want their wives to breastfeed at all. They will come to the hospital and tell you that, no, we only want them to do it just for a year, because we have to, I don't want my wife to lose her shape and things like that. And it does not really make sense. So it's all about awareness, discouraging.
And how true is it that, you know, breastfeeding is, or not breastfeeding is actually linked to breast cancer? Is it true?
Yes.
Okay, so when you
breastfeed your child properly, doing it right, even exclusively, it helps to prevent breast cancer. But many mothers don't believe in it, because they believe that when you don't breastfeed, your breast shape remains.
All right. Now he talked about earlier, the chief nutritionist earlier talked about the content of this therapeutic food. He mentioned peanut butter. He mentioned milk and oil. These are everyday things we have around in abundance. Why don't they just make recommendation? They give peanut butter and all of that.
It has to do with the processing.
Okay.
most of the time it has to do with processing. Mothers don't really have time in doing the right thing. And most of them, they have this kind of nonchalant attitude to things. So when the processing is not really done the right way, you end up giving those children infections.
And by processing, you mean, maybe blending peanuts, blending the fruits and all of that.
Harvesting and so on.
Okay.
So
All right. Olufemilala Shinawa, thank you very much for coming on the program. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.